No starship had crossed the Gamma Quadrant in over a year without detection, yet the sensors aboard Deep Space Nine suddenly lit up with readings no one could immediately explain. Commander Benjamin Sisko stood on the promenade's observation deck, the soft hum of the station's life support systems underscoring the low tension that had been building since the Dominion War's uneasy pauses in fighting. The wormhole had long since become both a gateway and a trap, a portal to uncharted territories, a lifeline to allies and enemies alike, and a perpetual reminder that the galaxy beyond the Federation's reach was vast, unforgiving, and filled with entities whose motives were inscrutable. But this was something different. Lieutenant Commander Jadzia Dax leaned against the railing beside Sisko, her usual serene composure tinged with a rare curiosity. "You're reading what I'm reading, right?" she asked, her voice low but sharp, carrying the undertone of excitement that only an explorer could maintain in the face of something utterly unknown. Her hands hovered over the tricorder she held, her fingers adjusting settings and filtering anomalies with precision. Sisko didn't answer immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the holoscreens that displayed a constellation of blips, all centered around a single point far beyond the known coordinates of the Gamma Quadrant's mapped territories. "This isn't a wormhole signature," he said finally. "It doesn't match any subspace distortion we've cataloged. It's stationary and massive. Whatever it is, it's not moving." Major Kira Nerys arrived behind them, her boots clicking softly against the deck. "Stationary? That's unusual. Nothing in the Gamma Quadrant stays put for long. Even the Dominion tends to shift its installations to avoid detection." Her eyes narrowed as she scanned the display. Could it be another Cardassian remnant? Something left from the occupation? Sisko shook his head. "Not Cardassian. This energy signature, it's too advanced, too stable. There's a technology behind it that even the founders would recognize as deliberate, organized." Quark appeared from around the corner, an expectant smirk on his face. "Deliberate? Organized? Sounds expensive. Should I be charging admission already, Commander?" He gestured at the screen. "I'd say we have a mystery worth a few bars, maybe a lot more if people back home get wind of it." Odo, who had silently materialized beside the group, tilted his head. "It is not a prison. I have scanned the energy patterns. They are familiar, yet altered. Whoever built this did not intend it to be hidden from us, but also did not want it detected by the Dominion. There's a subtle camouflage, deliberate and complex. Someone has been careful." The promenade seemed to fall silent for a moment. The usual bustle of merchants, Bajoran civilians, and Starfleet personnel reduced to the distant murmur of routine life. Even Nog, the young Ferengi ensign, appeared unusually still as he peered over the railing at the distant holographic projection of the anomaly. "It's big," he said simply, awe in his voice. "Bigger than anything we've seen. Bigger than DS9. Sisko nodded, the weight of responsibility pressing against him. "We don't know what it is yet," he said, turning back to the view screen. "And that's precisely why we need to investigate. Full away team prep. I want a shuttle ready, and Dax, you'll run the sensor scans. Kira, you're with me. Odo, Nog, prepare for any contingency. Quark, just keep out of the way, unless we need your unique set of skills." The crew dispersed, each with their respective roles, leaving Sisko to consider the implications in the quiet solitude of his ready room. A lost station, somewhere beyond the wormhole, meant possibilities beyond even the most ambitious Starfleet explorations. It could be a scientific hub, an abandoned military installation, or something else entirely. And that last possibility gnawed at him more than anything. Sisko tapped his fingers on the desk, recalling the first moments after the discovery of the wormhole and the establishment of DS9 decades earlier. History had taught him that uncharted regions of space were rarely neutral. They were contested, dangerous, and usually claimed by someone before Federation or Bajoran interests could assert influence. A station this size, this deliberate, had a history and someone or something that had preserved it. As if on cue, Dax's voice came over the intercom. "Commander, you might want to see this." Sisko activated the communications channel and watched as Dax manipulated the sensor array on the observation deck. A three-dimensional holographic projection of the station appeared, rotating slowly. Its architecture was reminiscent of DS9 in certain aspects, modular, circular sections with docking bays and structural spires, yet distinctly different. The outer hull shimmered with a faint energy field, a subtle but unmistakable shield that suggested adaptive defenses. "It's a sister station," Dak said, her eyes wide. "I can't explain it, but structurally, the layouts echo DS9's design. Same orbital anchoring patterns, similar modular construction, yet the materials, Cisco, the alloys here aren't just Cardassian or Federation. They're something else. Something new, but familiar at the same time." Cisco's mind raced. A sister station? How had no one known of it? The Dominion certainly would have taken note of such a massive installation. And yet here it was, beyond the Gamma Quadrant, hidden from even their advanced sensor networks. "We have to find out who built it," he said, determination hardening his voice. "And why it's been left here, in secret, for who knows how long." Kira stepped closer, resting a hand on the railing. Could it be Bajoran? During the occupation? Or something left from the Cardassian Federation agreements before the war? "I can't imagine Bajorans would have had the resources for something this massive, and the Cardassians, well, they'd have made sure the Dominion knew about it long ago." Cisco shook his head. "No. Whoever made this didn't want the Dominion or anyone else to find it. And that means its purpose isn't just strategic, it's personal." Odo's voice cut through the rising speculation. "I recommend extreme caution. If it has remained hidden, its creators likely left contingencies in place. Automated defenses, maybe even more subtle countermeasures. We cannot assume it is abandoned, nor that its technology will respond to Federation protocols." Cisco nodded, appreciating Odo's caution. "We'll approach carefully, but we can't let fear dictate action. We face threats far greater than anything this station could pose. We'll prepare a shuttle, an away team, and full sensor sweeps before we make any physical approach. We'll document, analyze, and then decide." Quark, of course, had another perspective. "You're all too serious. This is a gold mine. I can already see the rare commodities, the exotic imports, perhaps even some undiscovered spice trade routes. Think of the opportunities." He rubbed his hands together eagerly. "I volunteer to negotiate, or more accurately profit, from first contact." Cisco ignored the Ferengi's commentary and turned back to the holographic display. The sister station seemed almost alive, a silent sentinel in the void beyond the wormhole. There were docking clamps, what appeared to be sensor arrays, and strange modules projecting faint pulses of energy. The station's very presence distorted subspace readings subtly, suggesting a power source far beyond anything Starfleet had catalogued. Bashir, who had arrived quietly at the side, adjusted his medical tricorder on instinct, scanning for any anomalies that might affect physiology. "This station isn't just metal and circuits," he said softly. "I can't read life signs, but the energy signatures suggest internal processes, circulatory, fluidic, maybe even biological integration with technology. If anyone is inside, or if there is something living in the systems, it could be dangerous." Nog's excitement had not dimmed. "Commander, could this be a Dominion prototype? Or a secret Cardassian station left behind after the treaty?" He glanced at Kira. "I hope it's not another minefield." Cisco took a deep breath. "Whatever it is, we're about to find out. I want full preparations for an away team. Transporters calibrated, shuttles fueled, weapons ready but restrained, sensors on maximum. And everyone be prepared for the unexpected. Because beyond the wormhole, the rules of the Alpha Quadrant might not apply." As the crew dispersed to their stations, the station itself remained eerily silent, a phantom on the edge of the known universe. Cisco lingered a moment longer, gazing at the rotating hologram. In that instant, he realized something that was both thrilling and terrifying. Deep Space Nine had always been the center of political intrigue, war, and exploration. But this was a story that could redefine the galaxy itself. No one knew who had built the station, why it had been hidden for decades, or what secrets it contained. But Cisco felt, deep in his gut, that the answers would change everything. Alliances would be tested, loyalties questioned, and the balance of power across the Alpha and Gamma Quadrants might shift in ways no one could predict. And yet, despite the danger, a single truth anchored him. If Starfleet could explore, understand, and perhaps even claim this station for knowledge and peace, it might be the greatest discovery in decades. Prepare the team, he said to himself, almost as if speaking aloud could summon destiny. We're going beyond the wormhole, and we're about to meet history itself. The first pulse of energy from the sister station shimmered across the sensor array, subtle but undeniable. A warning? A welcome? The line between the two was impossible to discern from this distance. And in that moment, as the distant stars streaked past the observation deck, Sisko understood that Deep Space Nine had just found its lost twin, and the galaxy would never be the same again. If you want to see more Starfleet discoveries beyond the wormhole, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a ship or station you'd want to explore in the comments below. Who knows what secrets lie beyond the stars? The preparations for the away mission to the sister station were meticulous, with Starfleet protocol demanding caution at every step. Sisko stood on the bridge of Deep Space Nine, reviewing sensor readings with Dax, whose tricorder outputs flickered in unison with the anomaly's subtle energy pulses. The station, or whatever it truly was, loomed on the edge of known space like a sleeping colossus. Every sensor sweep revealed more mysteries, shielding harmonics that shifted when probed, hull patterns that seemed to anticipate the shuttle's scanning frequencies, and energy fluctuations that hinted at a power source both ancient and impossibly advanced. "Commander, these readings don't make sense," Dax said, adjusting the sensor filters again. "It's almost as if the station is aware we're here." She hesitated, her usual confident tone giving way to something that bordered on unease. "I've never seen defensive technology respond this quickly or preemptively to scanning." Sisko's jaw tightened. "Then we proceed with caution. Full tactical readiness. Odo, I want your eyes on every access point the moment we beam in. Kira, you'll lead the landing party. Dax, monitor energy fluctuations and attempt to determine the source of the shielding. Bashir, be ready for anything biological, hostile or otherwise. And everyone else, stay alert. This isn't just another research station." As the away team suited up in the transporter room, the tension was palpable. Nog fidgeted with his uniform, a combination of nervous energy and excitement, while Quark, for once, was unusually silent, as if even his usual bravado had been subdued by the enormity of what lay before them. The hum of the transporter filled the chamber as Sisko gave the final nod. "Energize." The familiar sensation of transport, disorientation, compression, and the rush of subatomic restructuring was accompanied by something else, a low, resonant vibration that seemed to permeate the very marrow of their bones. When the light faded, the away team found themselves in the docking bay of the sister station, a cavernous expanse filled with angular architecture and faint pulses of energy flowing along conduits that were far more advanced than anything Starfleet had catalogued. Kira immediately took the lead, her Bajoran instincts guiding her movements through the shadowed corridors. "Stay sharp," she whispered, scanning the walls for traps or surveillance devices. The station's interior was silent, yet every panel, every shaft of light, suggested a deliberate design meant to impress and intimidate. It was a twin of DS9 in some ways. Circular chambers, docking nodes, even replicated the promenade layout, but augmented with alien technology and a symmetry that defied standard construction logic. Dax ran her sensors over the walls, her tricorder beeping intermittently. The materials, they're not just advanced alloys. They're adaptive. The hull seems to respond to our presence, shifting density and refractive qualities. It's as if the station can hide itself in plain sight, or even defend against physical or energy-based intrusion. Nog, ever curious, tugged at a small panel, revealing a faintly glowing interface. "It's like a computer, but alive," he murmured, astonished. The panel pulsed in response, almost as if acknowledging his touch. "Commander, I don't think this station is abandoned. Someone is controlling it." Odo's voice came from the rear. "I agree. There is no conventional life detected, but the station itself exhibits purposeful behavior. It is sentient, at least in part, or controlled by an entity capable of manipulating these systems remotely. We must proceed with caution. The team moved deeper into the station, and as they did, a holographic projection materialized before them. Unlike the static Starfleet simulations, this projection flickered and shimmered with a life of its own, displaying a humanoid figure cloaked in flowing robes, reminiscent of the early religious orders of Bajorans, yet distinctly otherworldly. "Welcome, travelers," the figure intoned, its voice resonant, metallic, yet warm. "I am the custodian. You have found the station meant to guide the lost, preserve knowledge, and protect against forces unknown. Few have crossed the threshold without purpose. You, Commander Sisko, have arrived at a time when the galaxy's balance is fragile, and decisions made here will echo across quadrants." Sisko's brow furrowed. Who or what built this station? And why does it mirror Deep Space Nine? The hologram's eyes, or what resembled eyes, glowed faintly. This station was created to be a sister to what you call DS9, a mirror and a complement. It exists beyond the wormhole as both archive and sentinel, guarding secrets that, if unleashed prematurely, could destabilize entire star systems. Its creators are long gone, but their vision persists, to ensure that knowledge, power, and wisdom are preserved and, when necessary, wielded by those capable of understanding it. Kira whispered under her breath, "Guardians of knowledge? Sounds like a prophecy waiting to happen." Dax stepped forward, eyes scanning every flicker of light. "Commander, the energy readings, they're consistent with what we detected from the outside, but here they're amplified. The station sentience is actively maintaining its own defensive and monitoring systems. It's almost anticipating our movements." "Anticipating," Sisko repeated. He felt a chill run down his spine. "You mean it knows what we'll do next?" Nog, eyes wide, added, "Like it's alive? Like the ship knows we're here?" Odo, as ever, remained measured. "Yes. I've detected predictive algorithms or constructs embedded in the architecture. The station calculates probabilities, responses, and environmental changes. Any hostile act would trigger a countermeasure instantaneously. We are in a test of sorts, whether we realize it or not." Sisko nodded. "Then we proceed with diplomacy, not force. Let's see what the custodian wants from us, and what it expects us to do. This isn't just a mission of discovery. It's a negotiation with something that could surpass Starfleet, the Federation, and possibly the Dominion in power." As they moved deeper into the central hub, the station's architecture became increasingly alien. Energy conduits flowed like veins, powering chambers that seemed both mechanical and biological. The hum of the station's systems resonated through the floor, a constant reminder that they were not in familiar territory. Every corner, every room seemed designed to challenge perception, requiring the away team to adapt quickly to the alien spatial logic. Bashir examined the walls, marveling at the seamless integration of technology and bioenergetics. "If anything here is alive, it's symbiotic," he murmured. "The energy patterns are organic, yet controlled. There's intelligence behind every pulse." Dax's tricorder suddenly flared, detecting a shift in the station's energy. "Commander, someone or something, is entering the inner sanctum. The readings suggest a humanoid presence, but it's masked, cloaked from conventional sensors. This isn't random. This is deliberate." The team froze. Moments later, a figure emerged from the shadows, humanoid in shape, garbed in flowing robes with insignias unknown to the away team. Their presence radiated authority, yet there was no hostility, at least not yet. The custodian's projection had faded, replaced by this physical entity. "You are the first outsiders to reach this station in centuries," the figure said, voice calm, yet carrying an undercurrent of quiet power. "And you arrive at a critical juncture. The station's purpose is about to be tested, and your choices will determine whether the balance of this quadrant, and perhaps the galaxy, will be preserved or shattered." Sisko exchanged a glance with Kira and Dax. "We're here to learn, to understand," he said carefully. "We mean no harm. We seek knowledge and, if possible, guidance." The figure nodded, then gestured toward a central chamber where a massive holographic display emerged, depicting a constellation of systems, wormholes, and energy fields spanning both the Alpha and Gamma Quadrants. You see, the station's purpose has always been to safeguard the galaxy from threats both seen and unseen. But the Dominion, the Cardassians, and even the Federation cannot account for every possibility. That is why the station was built, to be a failsafe, a guardian, and a teacher to those who can understand its wisdom. Nog leaned forward, eyes wide with awe. This is bigger than I imagined. Bigger than DS9. And it's alive almost. Like it can think. Yes, the figure replied. And like all living entities, it will judge, test, and respond. You must prove your intentions. Only then can you access the knowledge, the technology, and the history contained within. Fail, and the station will seal itself, leaving no trace for centuries. Sisko swallowed, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He turned to the away team. We've faced impossible odds before. We've negotiated with gods and monsters alike. This station is no different. Our job now is to prove our worth not through force, but through understanding, diplomacy, and insight. As the figure gestured toward the inner chamber, the away team stepped forward, their boots echoing softly against the metallic floor. Every step carried the gravity of history in the making. The station's pulse, subtle yet constant, seemed to synchronize with their own heartbeats, drawing them into a narrative larger than any they had imagined. The wormhole had opened a gateway to the Gamma Quadrant decades ago, and DS9 had become a fulcrum of war, diplomacy, and survival. Now, this lost sister station promised knowledge and power beyond comprehension, but only to those willing to face its tests, decipher its mysteries, and respect its intelligence. And so, the first chapter of this new journey began, not with a battle, but with a choice. The galaxy beyond the wormhole was watching, waiting to see whether Starfleet's finest would rise to the challenge, or whether they would falter before the silent sentinel of history. The inner chamber was unlike anything the away team had ever encountered. It radiated a soft, golden luminescence, with walls that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the energy readings Dax had detected. The floors weren't merely metal. They were a lattice of adaptive material, shifting imperceptibly underfoot as if mapping each movement, analyzing weight, intent, and emotional state. Sisko, Kira, Dax, Nog, Odo, and Bashir exchanged wary glances, each acutely aware that the station was no passive structure. It was alive, sentient, and fully aware of their presence. "Notice the conduits," Dax murmured, crouching to scan the nearest wall. "They're not just transporting energy, they're communicating. The pulses, the patterns, it's as if the station itself is thinking, anticipating, and maybe even conversing in a language we haven't deciphered yet." Sisko studied the room in silence. "We're entering territory beyond Starfleet protocols. Anything we do here could have consequences we can't imagine. Stay alert." Bashir's tricorder beeped sharply. "I'm picking up biological readings, but they're faint, not human. Something or someone is here hidden. It's not dormant, but cloaked, perhaps using the station itself as a defense mechanism." Odo's shape shifted subtly as he scanned the room. "I concur. The architecture is not just sentient, but adaptive. Any attempt to manipulate or tamper with the station without understanding its internal logic could trigger defensive measures." The holographic custodian reappeared, hovering in the center of the chamber. "You stand at the threshold of knowledge and power few have witnessed. This station was created to safeguard the galaxy, and yet it will only grant access to those it deems capable of responsibility. Your presence here is unprecedented. The decisions you make within these walls will reverberate beyond your quadrant, touching worlds yet unknown." Kira's brow furrowed. "And if we refuse or fail, what then?" The hologram's gaze was unflinching. "Then you're sealed out. The station's records and defenses will become inaccessible for centuries, and the threats it guards against will continue unabated. You are not merely guests. You are potential stewards of power beyond comprehension. The station is testing not just your intelligence or skill, but your judgment, morality, and willingness to act in accordance with the galaxy's greater good. Nog shifted uneasily. So, it's basically saying, prove you're worthy or leave and never come back? That's a lot of pressure. Sisko exhaled, taking a deep breath. Pressure we've handled before. Remember, this is not about confrontation. Yet. First, we observe, we learn, we understand. The station itself may provide guidance if we approach correctly. Dax activated her tricorder and began mapping the energy flows. Commander, these readings suggest multiple levels of interaction. Some sections of the station are linked to what appear to be dormant chambers. Others are actively responding to our presence. It's almost like walking into a living organism that's fully aware of every step we take. As they moved deeper into the central hub, a sudden shift in the energy signature caught everyone's attention. The station vibrated subtly, and a low hum resonated through the floor. The walls shimmered, and suddenly a passage opened that had previously been sealed. Looks like it wants us to follow, Nog said, a mix of awe and apprehension in his voice. Kira nodded. Then we follow carefully. No unnecessary risks. The corridor led to a large observation chamber, overlooking a section of the Gamma Quadrant previously unmapped. Nebulae glimmered in colors that defied standard spectral readings, and several massive ships, alien in design, drifted in formation around an unseen gravitational point. Dax's tricorder went wild. Commander, these ships, they're not registered with any known faction. The energy signatures are similar to the station itself, possibly autonomous, but aligned with whatever intelligence controls this place. Sisko's mind raced. Autonomous ships controlled by the station or by the entity behind it. That could be an entire fleet, hidden from the Dominion, the Federation, or anyone who's watched this quadrant. Suddenly, the hologram reappeared, its presence more tangible than before. You see, travelers, the station's purpose is twofold: to preserve knowledge and to protect. These vessels are guardians, activated only when the station deems it necessary. They are sentinels, capable of responding to threats that conventional powers cannot contain. Bashir leaned over the railing, mesmerized. This is beyond anything Starfleet has cataloged. These ships, if we could understand their control mechanisms, their technology, it would revolutionize everything we know about propulsion, energy manipulation, and defense systems. Nog, ever the practical one, added, or it could get us killed if we poke the wrong button. Odo's eyes narrowed. We must remain cautious. The station evaluates us continuously. Any rash actions could trigger defensive protocols, and we may not survive the consequences. Kira turned to Sisko. So, our first challenge is understanding intent. Why now? Why us? The Dominion, Cardassians, even the Federation, they've all had reason to explore this sector. Yet the station waited for us. Why? The hologram's tone grew solemn. Time is not linear within this place. The station monitors events across decades, predicting outcomes, evaluating potential stewards. Your arrival is not coincidental. It is the culmination of variables that the station has been tracking. You, Benjamin Sisko, have qualities necessary to interact with its intelligence responsibly: diplomacy, leadership, moral judgment, and the ability to influence the galaxy without succumbing to power alone. Sisko's eyes met those of his team. Each member reflected a different strength: Kira's bravery and intuition, Dax's intellect, Bashir's adaptability, Nog's curiosity, and Odo's analytical precision. They were more than capable of rising to this challenge, but the station's true intentions remained opaque. Dax stepped closer to a holographic interface, her fingers brushing the air as symbols and figures shifted beneath her touch. The station is presenting a series of tests: logical, ethical, and tactical. It's assessing our decisions, predicting our responses, and evaluating whether we can be trusted with the knowledge and power it guards. Nog let out a low whistle. So this is like Starfleet's ultimate test. And it's alive. Great. Bashir interjected. Or maybe it's more than a test. Maybe it's a training ground. The station knows what's coming, the conflicts we haven't even encountered yet. It's preparing us subtly to handle threats beyond the Federation's current understanding. Sisko considered this, which could include the Dominion, the Cardassians, or even factions we've yet to encounter. If the station is preparing us, then we must be cautious, but also proactive. We can't simply follow. It will test us through our actions and decisions. Odo's voice was firm. Agreed. Observation alone will not suffice. The station's intelligence requires engagement, interaction, and demonstration of competence. We act deliberately, but with precision. Every movement, every choice matters. As the team advanced, the station's corridors twisted, opened, and reconfigured. Each section they entered seemed to adapt to their decisions, presenting challenges, offering tools, and creating obstacles that were never repeated exactly the same way. It became apparent that the station's sentience was not static. It learned, adapted, and evolved based on their interactions. Kira paused at a junction where two pathways diverged. One led deeper into the station, while the other opened to a viewing platform overlooking a vast chamber filled with energy conduits and a glowing core. "Which way?" she asked. Sisko weighed the options. "We go where the station seems to guide us, but remain alert for traps or tests. The path isn't just physical, it's a measure of our judgment." They chose the path to the viewing platform. As they approached, the station's energy patterns intensified, resonating through their suits, the floor, and even the air around them. The core pulsed in a rhythm that seemed to correspond with the station's sentience, strong, deliberate, and omniscient. Dax scanned the core. It's a central processing node, but it's more than a computer. The energy readings suggest consciousness, a neural network spanning the entire station, integrating every subsystem, every sensor, every conduit into a single, aware entity. Nog couldn't help but grin nervously. So basically, we're walking inside a brain the size of a station. No pressure, right? Sisko placed a hand on the railing, feeling the subtle vibration beneath him. This is why Starfleet exists, not just to explore space, but to confront the unknown, to understand it, and to make choices that preserve life and balance. If the station is a test, then our challenge is to navigate it with intelligence, morality, and teamwork. Anything less could have consequences we can't foresee. The hologram appeared once more, hovering above the core. "You have taken your first steps into understanding. Yet knowledge is not given freely. It must be earned. The station will continue to observe, evaluate, and challenge you. Your decisions, your interactions, and your ability to comprehend the vast responsibilities of this power will determine whether you are worthy of what lies ahead." Bashir looked around, awe and apprehension blending in his expression. "I've seen advanced technology before, but nothing like this. It's alive, aware, and capable of judgment. And somehow it's choosing us." Kira's voice was steady, though tinged with awe. "Then we show it what we're made of. Not through force, but through integrity, intelligence, and decisiveness. This is a chance to shape not just our destiny, but the destiny of the Quadrant, and possibly the entire galaxy." Sisko nodded. "Then let's begin. Every step we take, every decision we make, will be part of the station's evaluation. Stay vigilant, trust your instincts, and work together. We've faced impossible odds before. This is just another form of the unknown." As they moved closer to the core, the station's pulse intensified, responding to their collective presence. The energy hummed, walls shimmered, and conduits pulsed in harmony with the away team's synchronized movements. It was clear. The sister station was not merely a relic of the past. It was a living entity, testing, guiding, and preparing them for the unimaginable challenges yet to come. Every decision, every observation, every interaction was being cataloged, analyzed, and integrated. The away team understood that this was only the beginning, and that their journey into the heart of this sentient station would define the future of Deep Space Nine, the Gamma Quadrant, and possibly the galaxy itself. The away team descended further into the station's core, each step resonating faintly as the pulsing energy adjusted to their presence. Sisko led, but all senses were heightened. The station had proven itself sentient and responsive. Any misstep could trigger unforeseen consequences. For the first time, they all felt the weight of the responsibility. This wasn't merely exploration. This was a test of judgment, morality, and cohesion, and one wrong decision could ripple outward, touching systems and species they had yet to encounter. As they moved along the luminescent corridors, Dax's tricorder beeped erratically. "Commander, I'm picking up multiple cloak signatures, alien, but not Cardassian, not Dominion. Their energy patterns are reminiscent of the station's own sentience. These ships or beings are linked to the station in a way we can't fully quantify." Kira frowned, her hand resting on the grip of her phaser. So the station isn't just alive, it has allies? Protectors. Odo's voice carried its usual analytical precision. Not allies in the conventional sense. These entities or constructs appear to act autonomously, but are in synchrony with the station's directives. They will react defensively if it perceives a threat, and we cannot assume it will warn us before action. Bashir's eyes widened. So we're essentially inside an intelligent fortress, monitored and evaluated by beings whose intent and power we can barely comprehend. I've treated rare diseases before, but nothing here even remotely compares to the complexity of this situation. Sisko held up a hand, signaling caution. Observation first. Analysis second. Only then action. If the station is preparing us for something larger, understanding the environment is our best defense. Move carefully. The corridor widened into an enormous chamber. Here, the station's architecture became overtly alien. Pillars of semi-transparent materials spiraled upward, connecting to energy nodes that resembled neuron-like filaments. Every surface emitted a subtle glow, casting shadows that danced like sentient beings observing from the periphery. The away team instinctively slowed. The air was charged, not chemically, but as if reality itself was vibrating with intelligence. Dax floated her tricorder across the room, scanning patterns that were not random. "Commander, the station has layered defenses. Some are physical, some are energy-based, but a third layer is cognitive, psychic, almost. It evaluates our intentions, our choices, and our moral inclinations. Any aggressive act, any deceit, may trigger localized energy discharges, or worse, seal areas permanently." Nog leaned against a pillar, muttering under his breath. "I thought the Dominion was complicated. I thought the Cardassians were tricky. This is a level of complication I didn't sign up for." Kira smirked faintly, though her eyes never left the flickering pillars. "Welcome to the unknown, Nog. None of us signed up for this either." As they reached the center of the chamber, the energy pulsed more intensely, converging into a central column of light. The hologram materialized once again, more defined than before, exuding authority and gravitas. "You have arrived at a critical juncture. Beyond this column lies a control nexus. Through it, the station interfaces with a fleet of sentinels. But the nexus is not passive. Its operation demands judgment. You will encounter the first true test of decision-making under uncertainty. You must choose between intervention, observation, or withdrawal. Each path carries consequences." Bashir stepped forward, anxiety evident in his posture. "You mean we have to make a choice that will affect not just the station, but possibly the quadrant?" "Yes," the hologram confirmed. "And the consequences will reverberate. Time is fluid here, and actions can have effects unforeseen by linear observers. Choose carefully, for hesitation or impulsiveness may lead to catastrophe." Odo crossed his arms. "A test, then. The station wants to measure our judgment in high-stakes scenarios. I suggest we proceed with calculated observation before making any irreversible moves." Kira shook her head. "Observation alone won't work. The station's sentience is adaptive. It expects engagement. The Dominion or other entities could be en route, and the moment we hesitate could decide whether the quadrant remains in balance or falls into chaos." Sisko exhaled, weighing the options. "Then we must balance observation with engagement. We gather intelligence, but we also demonstrate our willingness to act decisively when necessary. The station is watching not just our decisions, but our thought processes, how we weigh risk, morality, and consequence. Dax pointed toward one segment of the column. Commander, the station has highlighted multiple pathways. One leads toward external observation points, perfect for analyzing the Sentinels and the wider quadrant. Another leads to internal control nodes that would allow us to interface directly with the station's core functions. A third is a mystery. The energy patterns there are unpredictable, risky, but potentially crucial for understanding the station's full capabilities. Nog muttered again, "Of course, the risky option is probably the one that gets us into trouble." Bashir glanced nervously between the options. "Or saves the quadrant if we're lucky." Sisko nodded. "Then we must divide our team. Dax, Nog, and Bashir, external observation. Kira, Odo, and I will investigate the internal control nodes. We leave the mystery path as a last resort, for when we have more understanding of what we're dealing with." The group split, each subgroup navigating different corridors as the station subtly shifted around them. The external observation team reached a viewing gallery overlooking a dense asteroid cluster and a nebula-rich sector. Through the translucent walls, they could see faint outlines of ships, some familiar Dominion designs, others entirely alien, seemingly in sync with the station's own energy signature. Dax's tricorder hummed. "Commander, the Sentinels are already mobilizing, but they are not moving aggressively. Yet. The station is testing response times, decision-making, and perhaps even moral prioritization. Note that some of the alien ships appear to be monitoring civilian traffic, while others are focused on potential combat targets. The station may be gauging our assessment of threat versus non-threat." Nog leaned forward, squinting. "So we have to decide, intervene to protect potential targets, or hold back and let the station decide." Bashir swallowed nervously. And the wrong choice could trigger a defensive response that might harm innocent vessels. Meanwhile, Sisko's group interfaced with the internal control nodes. Panels shifted beneath their hands as if alive, responding to touch, intuition, and command presence. Sisko felt the weight of responsibility. Every input, every adjustment, was measured not just by the station systems, but by its sentience, evaluating whether he could handle the ultimate authority it offered. Odo's shape shifted in subtle patterns as he analyzed feedback loops and energy flows. The station measures ethical application as much as technical skill. Any manipulation here requires precision and moral consideration. Improper use could destabilize the Sentinels or worse, the quadrant itself. Kira's hands hovered over the controls. So it's a moral puzzle wrapped in a tactical problem. Typical DS9. Sisko's jaw tightened. But this is unlike anything we faced. Lives, entire systems, possibly countless civilizations, hinge on our judgment. Hesitation is as dangerous as impulsive action. We have to act decisively, but wisely. As decisions were made, the station responded, its energy pulsing faster, almost as if acknowledging the choices. The Sentinels in the nebula sector moved cautiously, testing reaction times and strategy. It was clear that the station sentience was not merely observing. They were participating in a dialogue, challenging the away team to prove competence through action. Bashir whispered to Nog, "We're not just watching a test unfold. We are the test." Nog nodded grimly. "And we better not fail. Because whatever happens here, it's going to matter. A lot." Sisko looked at Kira and Odo. "Prepare for potential engagement. The Sentinels may interpret any delay or indecision as a threat. We must demonstrate our capability, our judgment, and our moral discernment simultaneously." The station's pulse quickened, as if sensing their resolve. The hologram appeared once again, voice calm but resonant. "You are navigating the first true trial. Observe the quadrant, interface with the station, and act when necessary. Your choices will define not just your competence, but your capacity to steward power responsibly. The galaxy beyond this wormhole watches, as do you. Remember, true power lies not in domination, but in restraint, wisdom, and collaboration." The away team exhaled collectively, fully aware that the decisions they were making in this chamber would echo far beyond their immediate presence. The station was not merely a test of intelligence, It was a test of character, leadership, and the ability to comprehend the weight of responsibility on a galactic scale. As the first wave of actions unfolded, judiciously redirecting sentinels, analyzing alien fleets, and weighing intervention versus observation, the station responded dynamically. Pathways shifted, energies pulsed in recognition, and a sense of harmony emerged. They were learning not only the station's patterns, but how their own judgments shaped outcomes. This was the first step toward mastery, and the first lesson. In the presence of unimaginable intelligence and power, wisdom and moral clarity were just as important as courage or strength. The away team's first choices rippled outward through the station systems, and as the energy columns pulsed, it became apparent that observation alone would not suffice. The alien sentinels, initially cautious, now began repositioning in formations that mirrored strategic defensive patterns, but they were unpredictable, adapting almost in real time. Nog leaned against a control interface, eyes darting between tricorder readings. "Commander, these formations, they're not random. They're responding to our choices, as if testing our predictive capabilities. Every hesitation, every decision influences their movement. It's like the station itself is playing chess with us." Bashir nodded, tense. "Except if we make the wrong move, the consequences aren't confined to a board. Lives are at stake. Entire systems, perhaps. I can't help but think of this as a biological puzzle. The complexity is staggering." Dax's gaze swept over the nebula beyond the station. "Commander, I'm picking up faint signals of previously unknown life forms. Civilizations whose technology barely registers on our scans. They're not aggressive, but the station is including them in the test. Our interventions, or lack thereof, could affect them indirectly. Every decision is a moral calculus with stakes we can't fully quantify." Kira tightened her grip on her phaser. "So this isn't just a test of strength or strategy. It's ethics under fire, and the station won't wait for us to figure it out at our own pace." Sisko's voice was calm, authoritative. "Exactly. That's why observation must be paired with decisive, morally sound action. The station is guiding, but it is not leading. We must think, anticipate, and act. Every choice will define how far we can trust the sentinels or be trusted ourselves." Meanwhile, Sisko's group continued navigating the station's internal control nexus. The neural-like filaments pulsed under their hands, adjusting based on subtle variations in thought, intention, and ethical clarity. Odo examined the feedback loops critically. "Commander, the station's interface is sentient, yes, but it is also reactive. Our actions are mirrored and evaluated constantly. Even a seemingly minor misalignment in logic or ethical reasoning could trigger unexpected defensive measures." Kira frowned. "So if we misstep, we could trigger a full defensive response, maybe even harm innocent ships outside." Odo nodded gravely. "Precisely. This is not a simulation. The station tests, but the cost of failure is real." Sisko considered this carefully. "Then we move with intention, not haste. Every adjustment we make here must anticipate both immediate and long-term consequences. The Sentinel's behavior will reflect our judgment, and through them, the quadrant will be assessed." As decisions were made, the Sentinels began subtle maneuvers, not overtly hostile, but unmistakably testing the away team's ability to respond to complex scenarios. Dax monitored them from the external observation post. "Commander, the Sentinels are now forming what I can only describe as containment matrices around certain sectors. It's as though they're presenting us with moral dilemmas. Intervene to protect potential targets or respect natural trajectories that could lead to collateral damage if we act." Nog muttered, his usual bravado tempered by the situation. "So, basically, do we save some, risk others, and hope we made the right call?" Bashir's hand hovered over his tricorder. "It's worse than a gamble. These are living systems, and the station's evaluation is ongoing. Even a delayed action could be counted as indecision, which might trigger defensive protocols we can't anticipate." At the same time, Sisko's team interfaced with a secondary control array, discovering that the station could amplify or suppress certain energy signatures in the quadrant. These adjustments affected the Sentinel's behavior and could shift the trajectory of entire fleets. "This is more than just monitoring," Sisko said. "We have influence. But influence is responsibility. Any miscalculation could escalate tensions or cause unnecessary casualties." Odo observed the energy flux. "Commander, the station is using a feedback loop. Our input creates a series of consequences, which then cycle back into the station's decision-making processes. The system evaluates not only the outcomes, but also our reasoning. Ethical clarity and predictive capability are intertwined." Kira's expression hardened. So the station is testing both brains and conscience. A real moral gauntlet. As the teams coordinated, communication became critical. Subtle energy pulses transmitted data between the observation post and control nexus faster than any conventional subspace link. It was clear the station had designed this challenge to require teamwork, negotiation, and an understanding of both immediate tactical threats and broader ethical considerations. Suddenly, an alarm resonated, a low-frequency hum vibrating through the hull. The Sentinels had detected an external anomaly, a fleet of ships not previously recorded. Their energy signatures were unfamiliar, neither Dominion nor Federation standard, and their movement suggested a readiness for engagement. Dax's tricorder readings spiked. "Commander, the anomaly is converging on the nebula sector. Sensors are unreliable in the clouded regions, but preliminary scans suggest advanced cloaking technology and adaptive shielding. This is potentially hostile." Nog's face paled. Of course, something has to show up to complicate things. Bashir swallowed hard. "And we don't even know their intentions. We could be walking into a preemptive strike or a trap designed to test the station's guardians." Sisko's tone sharpened. "This is why our decisions matter. The Sentinels will respond based on our behavior, but we cannot allow these unknown ships to exploit our caution or our morality. Prepare to engage, but engage with precision, not recklessness." Odo's form rippled as he analyzed potential scenarios. "The station will evaluate proportionality. Our response must reflect the threat level accurately. Excessive force could trigger a negative assessment. Insufficient force could jeopardize both the station and the quadrant. Strategic calibration is essential." Kira tapped her phaser. "So, we're walking a tightrope between morality and necessity. Typical DS9, but multiplied." The Sentinels began moving in more aggressive formations, creating barriers and intercepting points between the anomaly and civilian traffic. Dax's voice was steady but tense. "Commander, they're defending potential non-combatants effectively, but they will not fire without authorization. That authorization rests with us, by virtue of how we've been operating the station interface." Nog muttered again, "Great. We're not just test subjects. We're now commanders of a superintelligent defense network. No pressure." Sisko's mind raced through the possibilities. Each decision, whether to allow the Sentinels to act autonomously, to directly engage the anomaly, or to attempt communication, carried cascading consequences. Hesitation could be fatal. Impulsiveness could be catastrophic. We proceed with measured action. Dax, prepare a non-aggressive scan of the anomaly systems. Kira, direct the Sentinels to establish containment without engagement. Bashir, monitor for life signs and potential casualties. Odo and I will manipulate the control nexus to adjust energy flows, ensuring no unintended escalation. Minutes stretched as calculations, predictions, and ethical judgments unfolded simultaneously. The anomaly ships, detecting the Sentinel's movements, adjusted course, probing for weakness. The away team's measured actions kept the situation contained, avoiding immediate conflict while demonstrating command capability. Dax's tricorder finally confirmed a breakthrough. "Commander, the anomaly ships are not initially hostile. They're testing our intentions, much like the station. They react to our strategic and ethical choices, not aggression. Communication protocols may be possible if we maintain precision and moral clarity." Nog exhaled in relief. "So, we didn't just dodge a fight, we passed another test." Sisko allowed himself a brief nod. But the station is still evaluating. Every choice we make now, every interaction with the anomaly, will shape the quadrant's future and ours. This is far from over. As the anomaly fleet stabilized, a secondary hologram materialized in the station's chamber, ethereal and commanding. You have demonstrated preliminary competence, observation, ethical decision-making, and measured engagement. Yet the true trial is yet to come. The Sentinels and the anomaly are only the first layer. Beyond them lies a nexus of moral, strategic, and existential challenges. Your capacity to adapt, collaborate, and apply judgment will determine whether the station can trust you, and whether the quadrant can survive your stewardship. The away team exchanged glances. The weight of responsibility pressed down, but in that moment, they understood the magnitude of the station's design. It did not merely test skill or courage. It measured judgment, ethics, and adaptability. Every choice they had made, every calculation, hesitation, and decision had been observed, analyzed, and integrated into a larger pattern the station was constructing. Sisko's voice, calm but resolute, broke the silence. Then we continue. Each challenge, each test, each decision brings us closer to understanding not just the station, but the responsibilities it embodies. And if the quadrant is to remain in balance, we must rise to meet it, wisely, decisively, and together. And with that, the teams prepared for the next phase, the confrontation that would not merely test their tactical skill, but challenge the very principles by which they judged right from wrong, duty from morality, and courage from hubris. In the chamber's shifting lights and pulsing energies, they understood that the station was not only alive, it was teaching, guiding, and challenging them in a way that would define the fate of the galaxy beyond the wormhole. The anomaly fleet did not retreat. That, more than anything else, confirmed the station's true nature. On the observation deck, the stars beyond the nebula shifted as the unknown vessels adjusted formation again, not aggressively, but deliberately. Their movements were no longer probing. They were declarative. This was not reconnaissance. This was intent. Dax's hands moved quickly across the holographic display. Commander, they're locking into stable orbits along the nebula's energy currents. They're using the station's own gravitational harmonics as cover. That requires an understanding of physics that rivals Federation theoretical models, and possibly exceeds them. Kira exhaled sharply. So they're not just reacting anymore. They're integrating. Nog swallowed. That's not comforting. Sisko stood motionless, eyes fixed on the slowly rotating hologram of the station, the Sentinels, and the anomaly fleet. The picture forming was unmistakable. The station was not merely testing Starfleet's capacity to defend. It was testing its capacity to govern. This isn't a battle scenario, Sisko said quietly. It's a tribunal. Bashir looked up from his tricorder. A tribunal. Yes, Sisko replied. We're not being judged on whether we can win. We're being judged on whether we deserve authority over something like this. As if in response, the station's internal lights shifted again. The chamber walls shimmered, and the Sentinels' formation changed, not toward the anomaly fleet, but inward, forming a vast, concentric ring around the control nexus itself. Odo's voice was tight. Commander, they're positioning to isolate us. Not isolate, Sisko corrected. Contain. The station was no longer observing from a distance. It was enclosing the decision-makers at the center of the storm. On Deep Space Nine, alarms chimed as the wormhole flared unexpectedly. Major Kira, coordinating remotely with Ops, snapped her head toward the viewscreen. Ops to Defiant. Benjamin, the wormhole is reacting to the station. Not opening, not closing, resonating. Sisko closed his eyes for a fraction of a second. The prophets. Of course they would be involved. The station beyond the wormhole is interacting with Bajoran spacetime, Dax confirmed. This isn't coincidence. It's deliberate alignment. Bashir frowned. Are you saying the station knows about the prophets? I'm saying, Dax replied slowly, that it may classify them as peers. That sent a chill through everyone present. The anomaly fleet began transmitting. Not in Federation frequencies. Not in Dominion encryption. not even in standard subspace harmonics. The signal was layered, emotional resonance, symbolic mathematics, probability matrices. A language that wasn't spoken but understood. The station translated. A voice echoed through the chamber, neither male nor female, neither mechanical nor organic. You have demonstrated restraint. You have demonstrated cooperation. You have demonstrated foresight. Now demonstrate judgment. The holographic display shifted. Entire star systems appeared, some familiar, others unknown. Trade routes, civilian populations, emerging civilizations on the cusp of warp capability. And then threat vectors. Wars that had not yet happened. Conflicts that would happen. All branching from decision trees that originated here. Nog's voice was barely audible. It's showing us futures. Odo stared, transfixed. No. It's showing us consequences. The station spoke again. This installation was constructed to intervene when organic governance failed, not to rule, not to conquer, but to correct imbalance. Correction requires authority. Authority requires legitimacy. Legitimacy requires judgment. Kira clenched her fists. So what, you want us to choose who lives and who dies? No, the station replied immediately. We want you to choose when not to choose. That silence that followed was heavier than any explosion. Sisko stepped forward. This is what you're really testing, he said. Whether we can accept limits. Whether we can resist the temptation to play gods. The station did not deny it. Instead, it presented a scenario. A single system lit up, a densely populated world on the edge of contested space. Intelligence projections showed an imminent invasion by a powerful regional power. Millions would die. The station's sentinels could intervene effortlessly. The invaders would be neutralized in minutes. But the consequences rippled outward. The intervention would destabilize a fragile alliance, trigger retaliatory wars, create a precedent that the station would act. Forever. Bashir's voice trembled. If we do nothing, millions die. And if we act, Kira said, billions may die later. Nog stared at the projections. There's no clean answer. Sisko turned to Odo. Constable. Odo's face was unreadable. On Bajorans, we learned that even well-intentioned guardians can become tyrants. Power doesn't corrupt instantly. It corrupts slowly, through necessity. The anomaly fleet adjusted position again, closing in. The station pressed harder. Decision required. Sisko took a breath. No. The word echoed. We will not authorize intervention, he said firmly. Not here. Not now. Not by this station. Bashir stared at him. Benjamin. We will not set a precedent where force replaces self-determination. Sisko continued. Even when the cost is unbearable. Especially when the cost is unbearable. The station was silent. Then something unexpected happened. The anomaly fleet disengaged. Not retreating, but standing down. The sentinels relaxed formation, shifting from containment to observation once more. Dax's eyes widened. Commander, the projected invasion just changed. The invaders' fleets fragmented. Internal political instability. Negotiations. A fragile peace, not guaranteed, but possible. Nog blinked. Wait, how? Odo's eyes narrowed. The station didn't intervene. But our refusal altered probability. It broadcast a principle, not a threat. The station spoke again, its tone subtly altered. You have refused power. You have accepted consequence. You have demonstrated restraint in the face of certainty. This satisfies the first criterion. Sisko exhaled slowly, only now realizing how tense he had been. But the station was not finished. Now, it said, you will face the second judgment. The chamber darkened. The hologram shifted. This time, the threat was not external. It was the Dominion. Projected fleets. Jem'Hadar movements. Vorta strategy models. Futures in which the Dominion learned of the station's existence and sought to control it. Commander, Kira said quietly, this one is about us. The station did not deny it. If this installation is discovered, it said, war will escalate beyond recovery. But if this installation is destroyed, balance will fail elsewhere. You must decide. Hide the station and sacrifice its potential, or reveal it and accept responsibility for the war that follows. Nog whispered, "There it is. The real test. Not whether Starfleet could be trusted with power, but whether it could live with not using it." Sisko straightened. "We choose concealment," he said, without hesitation. "This station remains hidden. It does not become a weapon in the Dominion War." Bashir looked conflicted. "Even if it could save lives." "Especially then," Sisko replied. "Because some victories cost more than defeat." The station paused longer this time. Then approval. Second criterion satisfied. The lights softened. The pressure lifted. The sentinels withdrew. And for the first time since their arrival, the station did not feel like a judge. It felt like a witness. But Sisko knew something else now. This wasn't the end of the test. It was only the point where the station decided Starfleet was worth testing further. And beyond the wormhole, forces were already shifting, unaware that a power greater than any empire had just chosen not to rule. The Dominion did not see the sister station, but it felt it. In the Gamma Quadrant, deep within Dominion-controlled space, long-range subspace monitors registered a disturbance that should not have existed, a harmonic echo that rippled backward through probability itself. It was subtle, buried beneath normal stellar noise, but to the Founders, subtlety was irrelevant. They perceived patterns the way solids perceived light. Something had moved the galaxy without moving matter, and that terrified them. On a world of endless seas and black skies, a Founder rose from the Great Link. The others followed, forming a silent, shifting congress of thought rather than speech. Knowledge flowed freely between them, calculations, projections, emotional responses compressed into moments. The conclusion was unanimous. A variable had entered the equation that was not Dominion, not Federation, not profit. And worse, it had chosen not to act. To the Dominion, inaction by overwhelming power was not restraint. It was deception. A Vorta administrator knelt at the edge of the link, trembling as he received the summons. His name was Boreth, bred for analytical acuity and political obedience. He had overseen 100 successful assimilations of independent systems. But as the link's awareness pressed against his mind, he felt something new. Uncertainty. "Begin listening," the Founders instructed. Boreth bowed deeply. "Where, Great Ones?" "Everywhere." Across the Gamma Quadrant, Dominion intelligence protocols shifted. Jem'Hadar patrols were redeployed, not toward the wormhole, not toward Federation space, but sideways along obscure trade corridors, ancient dead zones, and regions once deemed strategically irrelevant. The Dominion was hunting a ghost. Meanwhile, aboard the hidden sister station, Sisko felt the change before anyone else. He stood alone in the chamber where the station's core interface hovered like a suspended thought. The air vibrated faintly, not with danger, but with anticipation. "You are aware," he said quietly. "Yes," the station replied. "The Dominion has begun adaptive listening." Dax entered the chamber, followed by Odo and Kira. "Commander, we're seeing subtle shifts in Jem'Hadar deployment patterns. Nothing overt, but it's coordinated." "They're triangulating," Odo said grimly. "They don't know what they're looking for yet, but they're narrowing the search." Kira crossed her arms. "So concealment bought us time, not safety." The station's lights dimmed slightly. "Concealment delays detection. It does not prevent inevitability." Sisko nodded. "I figured as much. What happens when they find this place?" Nog asked from her ear, his voice barely steady. The station did not answer immediately. When it did, its words were precise. "They will attempt to dominate. They will fail. The cost will be unacceptable." Bashir's jaw tightened. "Define unacceptable." The hologram shifted. Dominion fleets, Federation task forces, the wormhole destabilizing, Bajorans burning. Not certainty, but probability. Sisko clenched his fists. "So the very act of them finding you pushes the galaxy toward collapse." "Yes." "Then we keep them from finding you," Kira said flatly. The station regarded her. "Your capacity to prevent detection is insufficient." Silence fell. Dax stepped forward. What about misdirection? All eyes turned to her. If the Dominion is listening for anomalies, she continued, then give them something louder. Something convincing. Something false. Odo's brow furrowed. A decoy. A lie, Kira corrected. One big enough to swallow their attention. Sisko's gaze shifted to the station. Can you do that? Yes, it replied. At significant risk. Sisko didn't hesitate. We'll share that risk. The plan formed quickly, but executing it would test every principle the crew had upheld so far. The station would emit a controlled, localized anomaly far from its true position, an artificial echo mimicking a catastrophic failure of ancient technology. Powerful, unstable, tempting, a weapon that appeared barely contained. The Dominion would not be able to resist. But there was a cost. To generate the decoy, the station would have to momentarily expose a fraction of its processing lattice, enough to be traced if the Dominion adapted too quickly. It's a gamble, Bashir said. If they see through it. They won't, Odo replied. The Dominion doesn't question power. They seek to own it. Sisko activated his comm defiant. Prepare for decoy escort. If this goes wrong, you pull back immediately. Understood, came Worf's voice. Glory to. Just do your job, Kira cut in. The decoy ignited like a newborn star. Across the Gamma Quadrant, sensors flared. Subspace howled. Ancient gravitational echoes rippled outward, screaming of lost technology awakening violently. Borith felt it instantly. He fell to his knees. Great ones, he whispered, we have found it. The link surged with focus. Yes, the Founders replied. Approach. Cautiously. Dominion fleets converged. Jem'Hadar attack groups formed tight, disciplined formations. Vorta command vessels followed at calculated distances. This was not a frontal assault. It was acquisition. On the Defiant, Worf gripped the controls. They are committing substantial force. They're biting, Dax said. Hard. The sister station watched silently. Sisko felt the weight of it. Every ship that moved because of this lie, every life placed at risk by deliberate deception. This is on me, he said quietly. No, Odo replied. It's on all of us. The Dominion arrived at the decoy. What they found was chaos. A shattered lattice of energy fields, collapsing and reforming in impossible geometries. Temporal echoes overlapping. Systems that defied known physics, yet appeared broken. Borith leaned forward in awe. It is wounded. Yes, the Founders replied. And therefore vulnerable. Orders were issued. Jem'Hadar ships moved in. And then, the decoy failed. Not catastrophically. Precisely. The artificial lattice collapsed inward, triggering a localized subspace implosion that swallowed several Jem'Hadar vessels whole. Others were hurled aside, damaged but intact. The Dominion reeled. This is not a weapon, Borith stammered. It is a trap. Incorrect, the Founders replied. It is a test. Their perception sharpened. They listened again. And this time, they heard the echo behind the echo. On the sister station, alarms flared, not physical alarms, but conceptual ones. Probability branches narrowed dangerously. They're adapting faster than projected, Dax warned. They're filtering out the noise. The station spoke urgently for the first time. Concealment integrity degrading, adaptive intelligence increasing, decision window closing. Sisko's voice was calm, but resolute. What are our options? Two remain, the station replied. Option 1, escalation. Reveal presence. Force confrontation. Option 2, sever connection. I withdraw beyond detectable spacetime domains. Kira's eyes widened. You'd leave the galaxy. Yes. And the balance you maintain? Bashir asked. It would persist imperfectly. Sisko turned away, staring at the hologram of the stars. This was the cost he had feared. The galaxy did not want saviors who refused to rule. It wanted answers. And sometimes answers demanded sacrifice. He looked back at the station. Go, he said. The word tasted bitter. You don't belong in a galaxy that will only try to own you. The station paused. Then, Your judgment is accepted. Space bent. Not violently. Elegantly. The sister station began to fade, not disappearing, but withdrawing, slipping sideways through dimensions that Starfleet mathematics could barely describe. On Dominion sensors, the signal vanished. Boreth screamed. It's gone. The founders considered the absence. Then came a conclusion far more dangerous than discovery. If it can leave, they said, then others may follow. The Dominion did not abandon the search. It expanded it. And as the sister station vanished into the unknown, Sisko felt the truth settle heavily in his chest. They had protected the galaxy from absolute power, but they had also taught the Dominion a terrifying lesson, that the universe still held mysteries even they could not control, and empires did not tolerate mysteries for long. The galaxy did not notice the sister station's departure at first. There was no explosion, no flash of impossible light, no sudden silence on subspace channels. No captain woke to alarms screaming catastrophe. No senator felt the shift in their bones. For most of the Alpha Quadrant, life continued as it always had. Ships traded, wars simmered, politics stagnated, and faith remained stubbornly abstract. But balance is not something most beings notice until it is gone. On Deep Space Nine, the first sign came quietly, almost insultingly mundane. Chief O'Brien frowned at his console and ops, fingers dancing across the controls with the reflexes of a man who trusted machines more than people. The wormhole's stabilization field was fluctuating again, not enough to trigger alarms, but enough to be wrong. "Commander," he called out, trying to keep irritation from his voice. "I'm getting phase variance in the wormhole aperture. Minor, but persistent." Sisko looked up from his pad. "How minor?" "Minor enough that Starfleet Command will ignore it if I report it," O'Brien replied. "Major enough that I'll lose sleep over it." Dax joined him, eyes scanning the data. Her expression shifted from curiosity to concern far too quickly. "This isn't random. The harmonics are drifting. The wormhole's internal geometry is loosening." Kira crossed the ops floor, arms folded tightly. "You're saying it's unstable?" "I'm saying," Dax replied carefully, "that something which was helping keep it stable isn't anymore." Sisko felt the words land with uncomfortable weight. The sister station had never claimed to control the wormhole, but it had existed in harmony with the prophets, acting as a kind of counterbalance, an unseen constant in a system defined by nonlinear time. Without it, the system was recalibrating. On Bajorans, the consequences were felt more viscerally. VDEC assemblies reported increased prophetic visions among the faithful, visions that contradicted one another, overlapping timelines bleeding into shared consciousness. Some saw Bajorans standing triumphant at the heart of a peaceful quadrant. Others saw fire raining from the sky, the wormhole collapsing into nothingness, the celestial temple closing forever. Kai, when seized upon the confusion immediately. "The prophets are testing us," she proclaimed to a gathering of acolytes, her voice resonant and unwavering. "They are reminding Bajorans that faith must not be shared with outsiders who meddle in divine matters." Her gaze lingered pointedly on the image of Deep Space Nine hovering in the sky above the capital city. In the Gamma Quadrant, the Dominion felt the shift in a different way. The absence of the sister station created a void, not of power, but of constraint. The subtle pressure that had bent probability away from catastrophic convergence was gone. Dominion simulations, once plagued by inexplicable failure rates near the wormhole, suddenly began aligning with grim efficiency. Victory became easier to model. That frightened the founders far more than resistance ever had. Boreth stood once more before the Great Link, his posture rigid, his genetically engineered confidence cracking beneath the weight of uncertainty. The anomaly has withdrawn beyond detection, but its influence remains diminished. "Yes," the founders replied, "and the galaxy is destabilizing." Their conclusion was immediate. If a single independent entity could alter the balance of the Alpha and Gamma Quadrants simply by existing, and its removal worsened instability, then such entities were intolerable variables. The Dominion would not merely conquer the known powers of the galaxy. It would seek to eliminate the unknown. Orders went out across Dominion space. Intelligence gathering shifted focus from fleets and alliances to anomalies, ancient legends, rogue technologies, and non-aligned phenomena. Vorta analysts pored over forbidden data. Jem'Hadar patrols were dispatched to regions long ignored. The Dominion was no longer reacting. It was preparing. Back on DS9, Sisko felt the pressure closing in from every direction. Starfleet Command requested detailed reports, first politely, then insistently, about the events surrounding the unexplained Gamma Quadrant anomaly. The Romulans, ever perceptive, began asking questions they pretended were casual. The Klingon, sensing weakness, increased patrols near contested borders. And Bajor's government, emboldened by Kai Wynn's rhetoric, demanded greater control over station operations. "You're asking us to limit Starfleet access to the wormhole," Sisko said evenly during a heated conference with Bajor ministers. "We are asking for sovereignty," Wynn replied smoothly. "The prophets have made it clear that outside interference has consequences." Sisko met her gaze without flinching. "The prophets haven't spoken to you." Her smile was thin. "Faith is not always so direct, emissary." After the meeting, Sisko retreated to the wardroom, the hum of the station suddenly oppressive. Kira joined him, closing the doors behind her. "This is falling apart," she said bluntly. The sister station was holding something together. "I don't know how, but without it, everyone's pushing." Sisko nodded. "The galaxy doesn't like uncertainty, and we just removed its safety net." Dax leaned against the table, her trill spots catching the light. "The prophets still exist, but they're distracted. It's like they're compensating for something missing." Odo, standing slightly apart, spoke quietly. "The Dominion is doing the same. Absence is not peace. It's provocation." Sisko knew what that meant. By choosing restraint, by letting the sister station withdraw, they had preserved free will. But free will came with consequences. The Defiant launched 3 days later, responding to a distress call from a Federation outpost near the wormhole's periphery. What they found was unsettling. The station had been abandoned hastily, its personnel evacuated after experiencing temporal disorientation, hallucinations, and overlapping memories of events that had not yet occurred. Bashir treated the survivors with growing unease. Their neural patterns show signs of temporal echo. They remember futures that didn't happen. "Or haven't happened yet," Dax murmured. On the bridge, Worf monitored tactical sensors. "There are Jem'Hadar signatures in the region. They are observing." "They're not attacking," Sisko noted. "They're learning," Worf replied grimly. As the Defiant returned to DS9, Sisko felt a presence brush against his awareness, faint, distant, but unmistakable. "The prophets. You have altered the flow," they communicated, their voices overlapping in nonlinear chorus. "I know," Sisko replied silently. "Balance is disrupted." "Balance was never static," he answered. "It was maintained by that which was not of us." Sisko's breath caught. "You knew about the sister station." "We perceived it. As we perceive you." "Then you knew what would happen if it left." Possibility narrowed. Choice remained. Sisko closed his eyes. "The Dominion is adapting. They'll escalate. Conflict is inevitable," the prophets replied. "But outcome is not fixed." The connection faded, leaving Sisko alone with the weight of inevitability. That night, he stood by the viewport, watching the wormhole pulse softly as ships passed through, a lifeline and a fault line in equal measure. They had chosen not to unleash a god upon the galaxy. They had chosen restraint. Now they would have to live and possibly die with what that choice set in motion. Because the Dominion was no longer searching for a station. It was preparing for a galaxy where unseen powers might exist. And empires that fear the unseen do not hesitate. They strike first. The first Dominion strike did not come through the wormhole. That was what made it devastating. Starfleet had spent years training itself to watch the mouth of that celestial tunnel like a loaded weapon pointed at the heart of the Alpha Quadrant. every tactical doctrine, every contingency plan, every grim lesson of the Dominion War assumed that the enemy would come through the Celestial Temple, as they always had. The wormhole was the artery, the bottleneck, the place where wars would be won or lost. So when the first reports arrived from systems nowhere near the wormhole, confusion spread faster than panic ever could. It began in the Travis system, an unremarkable cluster of trade routes and minor Federation outposts, strategically insignificant and chronically underdefended. The distress call was brief, fragmented, and terrifyingly calm. Jem'Hadar ships emerged from subspace without warning, bypassing known detection thresholds as if Starfleet sensor theory were suddenly obsolete. Defense platforms failed before they could lock targets. Communications were jammed with surgical precision. By the time the signal reached DS9, Travis was gone. Sisko stood in ops as the report scrolled across the main view screen, the words blurring into something heavier than data. He had commanded fleets, faced gods, stared into wars that spanned quadrants, but this was different. This was not escalation. This was redefinition. They didn't just attack, Dak said quietly beside him. They demonstrated capability. They wanted us to know they can strike anywhere, Kira added, fists clenched. Not just through the wormhole. O'Brien shook his head in disbelief as he reviewed the sensor logs. Their ships weren't cloaked. They weren't using known Dominion tech. It's like they rewrote the rules of subspace travel. Worf's jaw tightened. An enemy that changes the battlefield itself is the most dangerous kind. Sisko knew exactly why this was happening. The sister station's absence had removed more than balance. It had removed uncertainty from Dominion projections. Without that unseen pressure distorting probability near the wormhole, the Founders' models had stabilized. The Dominion had seen the future more clearly, and they had not liked what restraint looked like. Within hours, the Alpha Quadrant convulsed. Emergency sessions were convened across Federation space. The Klingon Empire demanded joint command authority. The Romulans, ominously silent, began mobilizing fleets near neutral zones. Bajor's government issued a statement invoking the Prophet's protection, while quietly reinforcing planetary defenses. Kai Wynn's voice echoed across Bajoran channels. This suffering is the consequence of inviting foreign abominations into sacred space. The prophets have withdrawn their favor. Sisko did not respond publicly. Instead, he went to the temple, not the wormhole, but the quiet, ancient shrine on the promenade where Bajoran candles burned low and steady. He stood alone before the icon of the prophets, the air heavy with incense and centuries of belief. "You said outcome isn't fixed," he murmured. "So tell me what you're waiting for." The response did not come in words. It came in absence. No visions. No nonlinear chorus. No sense of layered time pressing against his consciousness. For the first time since he had become the emissary, Sisko felt something like abandonment. On the bridge of the Defiant, preparations were already underway. Starfleet intelligence had confirmed additional Dominion incursions, small, precise strikes against infrastructure rather than fleets. Shipyards sabotaged. Sensor arrays destroyed. Communication relays erased with almost artistic efficiency. "They're blinding us," Dak said, "reducing our ability to coordinate before the real offensive begins. And testing our response times," Worf added. "They are studying us as prey." Sisko straightened. "They won't find us passive." The Defiant plunged into warp, leading a task force toward the Travis sector, not to reclaim it, but to send a message. This would not be another quiet erasure. But the Dominion was already ahead of them. As the task force dropped out of warp, space itself seemed wrong. Subspace interference rippled across sensors, warping distance and time just enough to disorient targeting systems. Jem'Hadar ships emerged not in formation, but in staggered vectors designed to exploit Federation hesitation. The battle was brutal, short, and unlike anything Starfleet had trained for. Phasers missed by fractions of a second as Dominion ships shifted position unpredictably. Torpedoes detonated harmlessly against energy fields that reconfigured themselves mid-impact. Jem'Hadar fighters rammed cruisers with suicidal precision, tearing through shields before exploding. On the Defiant's bridge, consoles sparked and alarm screamed. "They're adapting in real time," O'Brien shouted. "Every shot we take teaches them how to avoid the next one." "Then stop teaching them," Sisko snapped. "Worf, switch to randomized firing patterns. Dax, feed false telemetry into our targeting algorithms." The Defiant lurched violently as it rolled through debris, its weapons suddenly unpredictable, its movements erratic in a way Starfleet doctrine would have called reckless. It worked. For the first time, Dominion ships hesitated. That hesitation saved lives, but it did not win the battle. A massive Jem'Hadar command vessel decloaked behind the task force, its weapons charging with terrifying speed. Before Sisko could issue the order to retreat, a new signal flooded the sensors, ancient, resonant, and impossibly precise. The sister station. It did not appear physically. It intervened. Subspace stabilized in a narrow corridor around the Defiant, restoring sensor clarity for exactly 6 seconds. Just enough time. Fire. Sisko roared. The Defiant's quantum torpedoes struck the command vessel dead center, ripping it apart in a cascade of energy that collapsed the surrounding battle space. The remaining Jem'Hadar ships disengaged immediately, retreating into warped subspace corridors that snapped shut behind them. Silence followed. The crew stood frozen, the realization settling slowly. "It helped us," Kira said softly. "Just enough." Dax nodded. Selective intervention. No domination. No command. Sisko felt it then, a presence, distant but deliberate. The sister station was watching, choosing, not saving the galaxy, guiding it. The consequences were immediate. Starfleet now knew the Dominion could be fought, but not without cost. The Klingons saw opportunity in chaos. The Romulans began back-channel communications with both sides. Bajor's faith fractured further as proof mounted that the prophets were not the only powers shaping destiny. And the Dominion learned its most important lesson. The unseen force it feared was real, and it had chosen sides carefully. Back in the Gamma Quadrant, the Founders convened once more, their great link roiling with agitation. "The anomaly intervenes," Barth reported, "but does not dominate. Then it seeks balance," the Founders replied. "Balance is inefficient," Barth said. "Yes," the Founders agreed, "which is why it must eventually be removed." They turned their attention inward now, not toward conquest, but toward countermeasures. Technologies designed not to overpower gods, but to isolate them, to deny influence, to collapse possibility. The Dominion would not fight the sister station directly. It would make the galaxy inhospitable to its purpose. And in doing so, it would force every faction, Federation, Bajorans, Empire, and God alike, to choose how much chaos they were willing to unleash for control. Sisko returned to DS9 with victory that tasted like warning. He stood once more before the wormhole, watching its light pulse uncertainly. "Whatever you are," he said quietly to the unseen station beyond the stars, "you've made your point." The silence that followed was not empty. It was waiting. The war did not end with a decisive battle. It ended with a realization. Across the Alpha and Gamma Quadrants, commanders, politicians, prophets, and gods alike came to the same unsettling conclusion almost simultaneously. Total victory was no longer possible, not without annihilating the very fabric that allowed the galaxy to function. The Dominion could no longer advance unchecked. The Federation could no longer pretend moral clarity alone would preserve peace. Bajorans could no longer believe the prophets were the only architects of destiny, and the sister station, silent once more beyond the limits of known space, had made it unmistakably clear that absolute intervention would never come. Balance had been restored, but not comfort. In the weeks following the Triva's engagement, Starfleet's strategy shifted dramatically. Fleet movements became less centralized, more adaptive. Captains were encouraged to think independently, to improvise rather than rely on rigid doctrine. The Dominion's ability to exploit predictability had exposed a weakness Starfleet could no longer ignore. New task groups were formed, blending Federation, Klingon, and even limited Romulan assets under provisional agreements that would have been unthinkable months earlier. Trust remained fragile, but necessity forged cooperation faster than diplomacy ever had. On Deep Space Nine, the station once again became what it had always been at its core, the crossroads where ideology collided with survival. The promenade buzzed with activity, traders, refugees, intelligence operatives, and diplomats all moving through the same narrow corridors, each convinced the future depended on them alone. Sisko watched it all from the upper level, hands clasped behind his back. "You've changed the tone of the war," Admiral Ross told him via secure channel. "But you've also complicated it." Sisko did not disagree. Wars that make sense are usually the most dangerous. Ross hesitated. "Starfleet Command wants to know if you believe the anomaly will intervene again." Sisko looked out toward the wormhole, its soft glow steady but no longer reassuring. "It already has. The question isn't if it will act again. It's whether we'll deserve the help." Ross exhaled slowly. "That's not a comforting answer. It's an honest one." Bajor's reckoning came more painfully. As visions continued to ripple unpredictably through the population, faith fractured along philosophical lines. Some Bajorans clung more tightly than ever to the idea of divine guardianship, insisting the chaos was a test of devotion. Others began to question whether the prophet's silence was evidence not of judgment, but of limitation. Kai Wynn's influence waned as evidence mounted that intervention, when it came, had not been exclusively prophetic. The sister station's brief but undeniable presence during the Trivas battle became impossible to dismiss. The notion that the prophets were not alone in shaping destiny shook centuries of belief to its foundation. Kira Nerys felt the conflict keenly. She had fought her entire life for the right to choose Bajor's future without outside control. Now that choice felt heavier than ever. "Freedom doesn't feel like this," she admitted quietly to Sisko one evening. "It feels exposed." Sisko nodded. "Freedom always does. That's why so many people prefer gods." In the Gamma Quadrant, the Dominion recalibrated with chilling efficiency. The founders did not abandon their goal of order, but they refined it. Expansion slowed. Precision increased. Instead of sweeping conquest, the Dominion focused on destabilization, sowing distrust among Alpha Quadrant allies, exploiting political fractures, and deploying technologies designed to dampen anomalous influences rather than confront them outright. Boratha's final report to the Great Link was simple and terrifying. The anomaly cannot be destroyed without unacceptable risk, but it can be contained by ensuring the galaxy never stabilizes enough for it to act decisively. Chaos, weaponized. The sister station observed all of this in silence. Beyond the reach of subspace, beyond the predictable flow of time, it watched the galaxy struggle to define itself without a safety net. It did not mourn. It did not judge. It calculated, not in probabilities, but in philosophies. Intervention bred dependence. Absence bred suffering. Balance lay somewhere in between. Its final action was its most subtle. A whisper, carried through nonlinear corridors only the prophets could perceive. Not a command. Not a demand. A suggestion. Let them choose. The prophets did not respond with words. They responded with acceptance. For the first time since the wormhole's discovery, the celestial temple became truly neutral ground, no longer subtly bending fate toward survival, no longer shielding the Alpha Quadrant from the consequences of its own decisions. The galaxy felt it. Conflicts became harder. Victories more costly. Decisions irreversible. But something else emerged alongside the danger. Growth. Starfleet captains learned humility. Bajorans learned resilience without miracles. Even the Dominion, forced to confront a universe that could not be fully controlled, began to fracture internally as Vorda and Jem'Hadar alike questioned endless war without divine certainty. On Deep Space Nine, life went on. Quark adjusted his prices. Bashir pushed medical ethics further than ever. O'Brien rebuilt systems designed to fail gracefully instead of catastrophically. Dax archived records that would one day be studied as the moment the galaxy stopped relying on destiny. And Sisko stood at the threshold between what was and what might be. He did not seek the sister station again. He did not ask the prophets for reassurance. He accepted uncertainty as the price of freedom. Because the most profound change had already taken root, not in technology, not in fleets, not in gods, but in understanding. The galaxy no longer believed it was protected. And because of that, it learned to protect itself. Somewhere beyond the wormhole, beyond time and intention, the sister station dimmed its awareness. Not gone, not dormant, simply waiting. Not for war, not for worship, but for the day the galaxy proved it no longer needed a guardian. If Kagan Jinn's survival once represented the possibility of a gentler destiny, then the survival of choice itself became this galaxy's defining legacy. The sister station did not save the Alpha Quadrant. It did not defeat the Dominion. It did not replace gods or rulers or empires. Instead, it forced the galaxy to confront the most difficult truth of all, that meaning does not come from protection, but from responsibility. Wars continued. Suffering endured. But no single power, divine or otherwise, could ever again claim ownership over fate. The galaxy learned to live without guarantees. And in doing so, it became something far more dangerous and far more alive.